The information shared on LightBody Radio is for educational and informational purposes only. The content of this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician, licensed healthcare provider, or qualified wellness practitioner with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or health goal. Dr. Lara May, her guests, and affiliates do not claim to cure, prevent, or treat any condition and are not responsible for any actions taken based on the information shared in this podcast. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge that you are responsible for your own health decisions and that any actions you take based on the content are at your own discretion and risk. Thank you for tuning in to LightBody Radio.
Welcome to LightBody Radio, where science meets soul and healing gets multidimensional. I am your host, Dr. Lara May, functional medicine pharmacist, master intuitive Reiki channel, and certified life and health coach. Here we decode root causes, transmute stuck energy, and empower your full spectrum healing journey, body, mind, and light body. This isn't just wellness, it's awakening, grounded in science, guided by spirit, and designed for your evolution. Let's rise and radiate. Welcome to the next level of you. Hello and welcome to LightBody Radio. I am your host, Dr. Lara May, and today I have with me Joe Sherman. He is a transformational coach for physicians. He's been a pediatrician for over 35 years, focusing on healthcare delivery to underserved and medically complex children in the District of Columbia, Tacoma, Seattle, Uganda, Bolivia. But after his own significant burnout experience, he had to step in he had to step away from clinical practice and step into this role of figuring out what we're going to do about this. So he was obviously on his own journey, but now he is a master certified physician development coach through the Physician Coaching Institute, and a trained facilitator with the Center for Courage and Renewal. So welcome. I'm excited to have you here.
Thank you so much, Laura. Thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about your story and, how you came to be passionate about this topic.
Yeah, I think, when I was thinking about going into medical school and being a doctor, I was the youngest of 7 kids, and I wanted to do something different than my older siblings, and really was interested in something to do with helping people. And I have to say, early on, I really was thinking more of being a counselor or a teacher, maybe a doctor, but medical school won out being a doctor because it was seemed to be a more sustainable career and occupation, profession. I was really wanting to work with kids primarily. So I went into pediatrics, and I really enjoyed my career as a pediatrician, especially certain jobs I had. And in retrospect, those jobs had to do with working with a team of people, doing a variety of activities, and working with families who were really in need. And that brought me to many different places, like you named. However, I also am a chronic helper, and learned through my own personal awareness and exploration and growth that I gained a lot of validation and affirmation through all that I was doing for other people, and having that all come back to me and said in many different ways, to the point that I would work harder and harder and harder and try to make up for a lot of holes and flaws that were made by systems that I was a part of. And that led to a few episodes of burnout and some changes of jobs, and eventually a pretty severe episode of burnout, anxiety, depression, where I really had to stop working. And when I did my deep dive into self-exploration and looked and said, what is it that I'm really about? Who am I apart from being a doctor? And how does that manifest itself in all different aspects of my life? And I really realized more and more those aspects of what I value, what really brings me alive, what brings me down. And as I did this, I entered back into medicine, but in a limited way. And I wanted to accompany other doctors to try to discover those same things that would help sustain them in their careers. So that's how I ended up as a coach and retreat facilitator.
When you were in the thick of your burnout, did you know that you were in it at the time?
You know, at the time, this word burnout was not something that was really popularized.
Yeah.
I can tell you I was anxious and then eventually depressed.
Mhm.
And I would say the first job I had out of residency, I had anxiety attacks. So that's when being anxious was first diagnosed, and I first started seeking help for that. And so I would say for me, I recognized that I wasn't doing very well. And the answer to that, through many jobs that I had, work harder, do more, throw yourself into it, and then you'll come around. You'll start to get more of that affirmation and validation and feel better about yourself.
Do you think that that's isolated to just the medical culture, or do you feel like it's more of a US phenomenon?
I would say that it's definitely a helping professional phenomenon. I do think that my wife is a clinical psychologist, and many of the same issues that I talk about physicians, she says, oh, therapists, same thing. They go through very similar struggles trying to, they were brought to the profession for a reason, and that reason can often get clouded with who you truly are and what you truly want for yourself and others.
And I think, it even takes us a while to get to that point of asking, what do we truly want for ourselves? And then realizing that how we show up affects our patient care. Because I see this too in pharmacists and clinical pharmacists, even in retail pharmacists. The dynamic with patient interaction is different on every, a little bit for each profession, I would say, but there's still that, that thing there. And the fact too, that if we don't show up, then someone's not getting help, or both, then another practitioner has to step up and fill that gap. And so I think there's a lot of pressure that we put on ourselves. Like, yes, there is pressure within the industry, but then I feel like we have this feeling of obligation and the passion to serve and help people too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to do with how we were brought up. I know that for me, as well as many of my clients, there are various backgrounds. People come from all different kinds of backgrounds. For me, this sense of big family, Irish Catholic tradition, self-sacrifice, give up your place for other people. These were all values that were kind of instilled upon me from an early age. I'm not saying those are bad, but I do think that anything like that taken to extreme, really, for me, I speak for myself as well as many of my clients I work with, you start to lose perspective. You start to lose, well, what is it that I do want? Who am I? Because I've been deferential all my life and trying to defer to other people. Sure, whatever you want. Yeah. Where do you want to go eat? Oh, yeah, wherever you want. Yeah, I could eat anything. I mean, from the simplest things to the most complicated things. So, yeah, I think that there are a lot of traits that are there, and there's a lot of Yeah, there are a lot of traps that come along the way.
So let's talk about the bigger picture of what the impact is on not only physician burnout, but, really any healthcare practitioner, whether it be an NP, PA, I think all of us, nurses for sure. And like you said, like when you first went through it the first time, burnout wasn't the the fashionable term. But I mean, for all of everything that we all went through during the pandemic, I feel like burnout came to the forefront, and we now know at least what to call it. And we were able to label it and give it a name. So at least we have that, and we can move forward from that, right?
Yeah, I think that that's true. I think, well, the term has been around for a while, but it hasn't been applied so much to helping professionals. Been more so in folks in the military, folks in other places. But I would say, as far as its impact on patient care and its impact on workplace culture, if you ask physicians these questions, do you believe you're burned out? Do you have these signs where you feel emotionally exhausted? You feel like you're not really being effective at what you do, and your idea of how you're helping people is really pretty low. Then they'll say, yeah, definitely. I mean, over 50% will say that. Then if you say, do you think that this impacts your patient care? Do you think that your patients see this? Vast majority will say no. No, I can hide it really well. No problem whatsoever. I disagree completely. I think I'm on the other end and I'm a patient and I go in and I'm just sitting there watching this person and I'm going, whoa, what are you dealing with?
Right.
To myself. And now that I do this more and more, now I'm kind of like, if something happens, I go, how are you doing? How are you? I kind of turn the tables a little bit, say, how's it going? I hear there's a lot of pressure, your practice or this hospital was just bought out by a big corporation. How you dealing with that transition? Those types of things. So I do think it impacts it. And also, if you are working with a team, a clinical team or, a hospital team, whatever it is, and you have a bunch of people that are feeling overwhelmed and more and more isolation because technology and all of these different silos that we now find ourselves in. And then the pandemic came along. We got used to kind of staying away from each other. We feel increasingly isolated. And so you have people who are burned out in their jobs and they're not getting the support and sense of teamwork that they would usually get and we used to get before. And so it just kind of leads to everyone kind of going downhill.
Yeah, it's ironic that it becomes that catch-22 situation. I'd like to think we've made progress. Do you think we've made progress in especially doing this every day?
Yeah, I would say, if you look at the statistics about burnout and you see it's published in a lot of different journals and media, we were during the pandemic and definitely post-pandemic, if people who reported being burned out across the board, physicians, nurses, nurse practitioners, everything, was like above 50%, 60% in that range. And now they're starting to come down. And I mean, come down means that it's in the 40s now. So that means like you go in to see a provider, 40% of the time that person's more burned out, right? So that's not great. But I do think that there are starting to be changes that are occurring, both institutionally as well as with individual physicians. And institutionally, it's slow because medicine is becoming increasingly corporatized. And so the bottom line is what counts. And so that's kind of hit or miss depending on who's in a leadership position, what kind of supports they're going to put in place. A lot of those supports have to do with structural supports, with having help with all the administrative tasks so providers can offload those administrative tasks that they weren't trained to do in medical school. And it also has to do with whether people are included in decision making. If you are actually invited and engaged in decision making about things that impact your work and your job, and you feel like you're on the same team working for a common mission, that means a lot to physicians, especially, but I think across the board, all healthcare providers. On the personal side, I think society is changing dramatically. People coming out of medical school now are not, the old, I don't know, I'm going to age myself now, Marcus Welby, or, these doctors that, I'm going to devote my entire life to medicine, and my wife, of course, and my family and society will support me and do everything they can to make sure that I can remain in that position. That's not true anymore. People are looking for a life. They're looking for balance. They're looking for a variety of, and they're looking at being a physician is more of a job, not a vocation, and this turning your life over to medicine anymore.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I still feel like there's this aspect of people feel a calling to do it or to be like in any of the healing arts. But yeah, I definitely think, and for good reason too, that yes, there should be a balance. And yes, it is noble to be able to help someone, but that doesn't mean that should be at the expense of your own well-being. Because, if we can't show up feeling good and feeling fulfilled, then we're not going to be able to show up for those that we help either, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's the other thing. I do think that students, medical students, trainees are exposed to this concept of burnout and self-care and balance at an earlier time. I mean, we were never exposed to it. That didn't exist. That meant you couldn't do it. You couldn't hack it. You couldn't cut it. So that means, yeah, we don't want you because you're not willing to be in here on your days off, even though you're on call every third night. So now it's looked on differently. And it is definitely true. I can tell you for myself, as I look back, the doctor I was post-call after being up all night was not as effective as the doctor I was after a good night's sleep. It's better. You are a better person if you feel better about yourself.
Mm-hmm. So, culturally speaking, then, can we say more about that institutional factor? Is this where your retreats come in, or?
Yes, actually it is. I would say that. I think culturally speaking, it's tough because, I mean, right now, I said that some of the statistics for burnout are decreasing, and yet we have this mass exodus of people leaving the profession, especially primary care, and certain other specialties. I think it's getting to be overwhelming to be a primary care doctor and just handle all of the administrative burdens and everything that goes with it. So we still have this mass exodus of people retiring early, trying to find something else to do with their careers, all of these different things. And now our healthcare system is scrambling because of, whatever the politics that's kind of taking away different funding, and Medicaid and Medicare being thrown all over the place. Nobody knows what's going on. There's a tremendous amount of uncertainty. Yes. And that uncertainty breeds anxiety. It breeds fear, all of those things. So I think institutions, again, it has so much to do with leadership, and it has so much to do with understanding the situations that people are in. It's always, in the past, it's been administrators are the bad guys, physicians are all the good guys, or, the other way around, it was administrators are the only ones that are really keeping the doors open, the lights on, and all of those physicians, they just think that everyone wants to bow to them and do whatever they say. So this is a cross-cultural misunderstanding.
Yeah.
I think
I
this
agree
is
with that.
where we're speaking different languages. And if we can come to a common mission, and it's hard. It is so hard now because there are more and more pressure put on administrators to watch the bottom line and to be there. And that makes them kind of natural enemies to the physicians. But I really do think I work with physicians, I work with medical teams, I work with clinic staffs to really get people in the same room, away from the work environment, get to know each other as people, as human beings, and seeing the commonalities, seeing the gifts and talents, the challenges and the needs, where we can help each other out, where we can support each other. And if we are working together and trying to do what we can to support each other while we help our patients, then I do think it can work.
Yeah. It's a lot to think
Yeah,
about.
typical.
Well, especially too, because I'm still in it. Like, yes, I have my, small functional medicine practice, but I'm still, in the hospital environment, working critical care. And so I definitely, I see it. And it's interesting also to think about just like my different experiences with leadership teams over my career as well, within different systems, and whether they're for profit, not for profit, whether they're run by physicians or not. Most of the time hospitals, I don't know if most people know this, but hospitals and systems are not run by practitioners in the C-suite. It's business people up there, not people with MD or PharmD or any of these other Ds after their name. So it's really interesting too, that how do you get those C-suite people to understand what we do and why we do it, and to help us again, like come together, like you said, come together. So I think I would love to be a fly on the wall at one of your retreats, especially if it was a combination of practitioners and C-suiters.
I will give you, this is an example that I talk about quite a bit. I worked for a small nonprofit pediatric clinic, very small, and it had were 3 pediatricians, and there was an administrator. He was the clinic manager, administrator, director. He held a lot of hats, but it was a nonprofit clinic, and so he was drawn with his business experience to go work there and to be a part of that. And we would meet every week and talk about different policies. We were always trying to balance to make sure we were a nonprofit. We wanted to make sure that we had at least 50% Medicaid patients, some uninsured patients that we wanted to be serving the community. And I remember we had a meeting we were discussing about, because we were also a center for evaluation of autism, children with autism or other neurodivergent problems. And so we had this meeting, and he was talking about the different routes or protocols for patients covered by Medicaid and those covered by commercial insurance. And as he was talking about it, my blood pressure was boiling. I was getting really defensive. It's like, how can you say you can't discriminate against people with Medicaid? You have to make sure you can't just be going after the money. And then this is something that instead of him arguing or going back, he came up to me after the meeting and he said, "Joe, can I talk to you?" I said, "Sure, yeah." He says, I think we misunderstood each other there. And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "This protocol, this way that we have," he said, "you have to realize, I also agree. I'm part of this. I am part of the same mission you are. And actually, the way this protocol works actually puts the children that are covered by Medicaid at an advantage over the people that have commercial insurance. And I was like, oh, well, I didn't understand it that way. I thought, he said, Joe, if you have a problem or if you have a concern that you think something's wrong or something you don't agree with, just come to me and we'll talk it out. Now that is unusual, right? That is something that takes a certain type of leader, again, to engage people who are really going to be impacted by policy changes in the decision-making process up front. And I coach some chief medical officers who end up being the MD that's in the C-suite. And they're all intimidated. They have imposter syndrome because they don't have their MBAs, or some of them do, but they still feel like all of the other, administrators, business people are in a club because they're in their medical club. And so if they're not part of the club, they feel left out. And what I tell them is, you are bringing your expertise, your experience, and you are part of this cross-cultural communication. And you can help them understand what's happening on the front lines with clinicians, and they can help you understand the pressures they're under. But just be open without judgment. Take all that judgment, turn it into curiosity, and ask questions.
I love that. What are some other things that practitioners, physicians can do? Maybe like maybe this is two different questions too. On one hand, prevention, to prevent getting there, and or like maybe even like once they're in the early stages, like to help themselves.
Absolutely. I think, number one, for prevention, it starts early. If you're in medical school, nursing school, getting your degree in counseling, psychology, or whatever helping profession that you're in, develop reflective skills, reflective tools early on. When I say that, I'm talking about journaling, meditating, talking to people like coaches, therapists, friends, or outlets that to be able to understand who you are and how you channel who you are into what you do. Because what's going to happen in your future is that people are going to try to mold you into what they want you to be, what they think you should be. So you have to do whatever you can to hold on to your why, and also all of those aspects of who you are outside of medicine. Somehow you have to keep cultivating those creative skills, those outlets, those things that bring you joy. So that's huge. And the other thing is that you have to set boundaries. You have to set, even when you don't like it, oh gosh, it kills me. Sometimes I think, because setting boundaries actually helps you and other people around you. They know what you can and can't do so that they can plan on that. But if you say yes to everything and then can't live up to it, then that really disturbs things. People can't count on you. So being able to set boundaries early on and understanding, learning how to communicate and advocate for yourself in a way that's acceptable. Way that says, I hear what you're saying about you wanting me to do this, and I really want to help out, and I understand you're in a tough bind, but I have to also tell you that what's going on at home right now, or what's going on in my life right now, I've determined I can't take anything more on. So I'm sorry, I'm going to have to say no to that.
Yes. No is a complete and loving sentence. I tell my clients that all the time. But yeah, I love the way you phrase that too, because it's so true. Like how you say and how you express that definitely is going to have an impact on how it's received. Now, granted, like how the other person receives it is their own business, but we can put in, we can have a lot of influence, hopefully, on, our our intention going into that it's, you know, and sort of, you know, sometimes maybe the opposite person doesn't need to know the why, but sometimes it does help to know the why. And, you know, yeah, so I think that's great. And then too, like you said, holding on to who you are. And granted, like we all change over time. None of us is the same person we were at, you know, 18, 25, 30, 45, even, you know, and on up. But it is so funny that when we're in the thick of the rigor of that educational program, and then I think a lot of things fall to the wayside when, you know, you're in school, you're in the professional program, and then there's residency. And then, you know, and so it is hard to hold on to that and or make an effort to reconnect to some of those things, like whether it's music or a church group or, you know, some other sort of community volunteer program, yeah, or a book club, whatever it is, like to find that outlet to help you remember who you are as a human being. Yeah,
Absolutely.
for sure.
And to realize if you're in a helping profession, and if you're in healthcare right now, it's a traumatizing experience. I mean, I you know, I don't throw that word around lightly. My wife is a trauma therapist. So, but it's traumatizing in the way that you take on a lot of other people's challenges and trauma and suffering. And it's a privilege to be able to be there and to hold that. But if you want to be there and to be fully present to people and to hold their pain, you have to be aware of what's happening in your own body, in your own heart, your own soul. And so for me, that means you need to have support through a therapist, through a coach, through, you know, whoever it is that you feel you can go to process some of this. And along with the outlets, the exercise, the meditate, whatever it is, having someone that you can go to and to truly be able to process what's happening to you and give you this kind of mirror to hold up and say, this is what's happening to me, because you lose that sense of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think anytime you're in it, you're in the thick of it, sometimes it's hard to see out and to have that self-reflective perspective, so that you can, again, start making autonomous, self-empowered decisions. And I think that's what's great about coaching and, you know, and therapy too, depending on what type of therapy you're doing. But yeah, for sure. All of it, all of the tools, the whole basket.
Yeah. And I don't know, you know, in pharmacy, whether they're messages or they call it the hidden curriculum in medical school, where you're expected to just suck it up and deal. Don't ask for help. Sure. And that's a sign of weakness. So the idea of seeking out therapy or coaching is something that I think people still aren't really sure what it is, because I coach, and it's the first question I ask is like, do you know what coaching is? Have you ever heard of coach or what? It's like, that's somebody that tells me what to do, right? It's like, well, not exactly. So I think, but I know for me, my first year out of residency, I was having terrible headaches, backaches, numbness. I thought for sure I either had a brain tumor or MS or something terribly wrong with me. I went to my doctor and, you know, I think he knew it was anxiety right away, but he said, well, do an MRI just to make sure. And then he referred me to a psychiatrist. And so here I was young, I wasn't even 30 years old. And I was like, wow, so I have to go. But at the same time, I got the help I needed. And there's a lot of fear that if you seek mental health interventions, support, whatever it is, then somewhere along your career, you're going to have to answer a question. Did I ever receive, or have I ever, been under the care of a behavioral health, whatever? There have been questions, and there are questions that are on licensing applications, things like that, but they're being eliminated. They're being taken away. And right now, I think there is a movement. There's a movement afoot to try to get rid of all of those types of questions that separate out behavioral health from medical health. And so I think trying to take away all of those myths about seeking help means you're weak is something that we really need to instill more and more into our medical training.
Yeah. It's interesting because that does beg the question, like, is that an ethical question to even ask someone? Like, shouldn't that be part of your protected health information? Because I've even noticed too, on those statements of disability that you get, when you're first hired, now they're starting, you get the list of what exactly they mean, but it encompasses mental and physical. And so I'm like, well, that's interesting. So I don't know about that, but
well, I work with physicians that they come to me for coaching and they're really, really struggling. And sometimes it's a first step that they've made before they go to therapy, because they feel like going to a coach might be safer in some ways. And I will ask them, when I first talked to them, I said, well, have you ever seen a therapist? Is this something that it's like, well, some of them are seeing a therapist also, which is great. I love that because I got my bases covered. But some of them will say, well, I thought I'd try this first or something like that. Some of them will say, I went to therapy, but I felt like the therapist really didn't understand my reality. And I wanted somebody that really lives it and knows it. And I think that's legitimate. And there's a whole wide variety of therapists. So trying to find a good match is important. So I do think that being able to destigmatize this and trying to, I mean, there are some residency programs and some medical schools that have counselors or therapists that are part of the faculty, and that students or trainees are given 3 or 4 sessions routinely, and they show up. I even think that some of them require them to show up for one at least. And part of it is, if you're going to be dealing with other people's mental health issues, you better know what it's like to be dealing with your own.
Sure.
So even from a training perspective, I think it's important.
Yeah. So moving forward, what if you could sort of paint a picture of best possible case scenario, what would that look like?
For what? For like
for addressing this and really, maybe turning the tide.
How about a new healthcare system? We're at a very challenging time. The political climate is impacting healthcare dramatically right now. I mean, not only in our country, but across the globe. So I feel like right now we're at a time where we're kind of in survival mode a bit because of all the uncertainty. So I think right now it's important for each individual to take care of yourself while you're taking care of other people. And that should be the number one priority. Really make sure as best you can to take care of yourself while you're dealing with all of these stressors of the system and everything that's happening. I think that, I mean, again, like I said, kind of tongue in cheek, we need a new healthcare system, but we do. We're dealing with an antiquated healthcare system that is not equipped to deal with modern technology, communication, discoveries, research, everything else. And we need to come up with perhaps new types of health professionals. We need to come up with different approaches to deal with preventative health, lifestyle medicine, and medical care. When I lived in Bolivia, I was part of an NGO, non-governmental organization, whose mission was Salud Integral. It's kind of like integrated health, but it was health not like, oh, we're going to have an integrated health. We're going to have meditation, massage, yoga, a doctor, a naturopath. It was economic health, community health, educational health. It looked at healthy people and healthy communities and what it took. The medical part of that was this tiny slice of the pie. And it was there as a safety net when all the other areas of health somehow were broken or people slipped through the cracks, something went wrong, that there would be medical care to kind of take care of those things. But investing in the health, the behavioral health, the educational health, the community health, all of those things really is what the approach that we really need now. And we need people. Doctors are not trained to type in computers for, two-thirds of the time that they're seeing patients.
Right.
Doctors are trained and should be trained to be people that can be there for their patients, people that understand what's going on, to try to figure out what's happening as a partner with their patients, not to spend 2 hours with typing in a computer for every hour of patient care. That's where we are right now. And so there should be, I don't know whether AI is the magic answer or what it's going to be, but we need a lot more help for medical providers to offload all of the tasks that are not what they're trained to do.
Yeah, I do think AI actually is at the beginning of helping a little. I know they have the ability now you can turn it on during the visit and it'll listen to the visit and then essentially create a note from there. Which it's huge. One of my really good friends is an NP in the endocrinology space. And so, if you think about like what goes into that, like talking about, because she's specifically diabetes. And so it's like talking about their food, talking about their numbers, asking them how so it's funny how much she actually does that could also be equated to coaching on top of what she's doing with her medical duties. And then once the visit's over, then she has all the documentation that goes with it. So yeah, for sure. And so I definitely don't think like the patient population, unless they're in the medical field too, like has any concept of why you only get to see your physician for 15 minutes. And it's because there's literally not enough time in the day. And unfortunately, the payment structure, like you said, this just goes into what you said about we need a new system. But the payment structure is in a way that if you don't see, 4 patients an hour for your 8-hour day, then you're going to be lucky if you're breaking even. So there's a lot that's that could be improved upon for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think when the Affordable Care Act was passed, it was a dramatic shift in advancing the access to healthcare to more and more people. But it got so watered down from what it was originally supposed to be, but it was a start. It was something and the thing about it that I like so much is that it has overwhelming approval by the population in the country. And so when you have something like that just gives you a little taste of what it could be to have more options and more people covered, then I'm hoping that there can be more and more momentum despite the current political climate, but there can be more and more momentum to try to move into a more holistic approach, to have a variety of people that are dealing with your biological health, your mental health, and all of the rest. And that's available to everybody, not just people that can, write a check or just pull it out of the bank account.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I mean, having like you mentioned earlier, having a therapist and a coach, woo, how nice that is. But man, that's expensive.
It is. Absolutely. And that's something that, there needs to be, I mean, society in this country, I guess we're a democracy, so we elect people to make laws and to run the country. But if we want to prioritize everyone in the community, and we believe that it's kind of like that rising tide lifts all boats, then we want to invest in everyone being healthy. Because in the end, it's going to cost all of us if they're not.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we're on track to bankrupt ourselves just with our healthcare costs in this country. And supposedly we're supposed to be the best on the planet with it. I don't know. I don't know how that works, but anyway, so, well, we're coming to the end of our time. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you want to bring light to at this point in the conversation?
Yeah, I do. I don't want to leave everybody with all this gloom and doom and everything, because I do believe, I mean, I work with some young medical students that are just brilliant people, and not only brilliant people, but they're talented. They have so much more life experience that they're bringing to medical school than I ever had. And I believe that life experience and that enthusiasm, that needs to be cultivated and tended by people who are senior in the medical community and in medical education, not brought down. So I think that we have brighter and more talented and diverse people coming into healthcare than we ever had before. And I think that needs to be encouraged. That needs to be funded, paid for, so that people don't have the burden of this massive debt. And that's the advance that I think would really make the difference. Changing the way that us old timers look at how we train people who are coming in already with all of this experience, to have them hold on to it, cultivate it, bring that to their work, instead of putting that on the shelf and replacing it with our old habits.
Yeah.
The
old just suck it up and keep pushing forward. Not the best. That's how I was raised and trained too, though. So I totally get it. But it is nice to hear that programs are bringing in those resources, and so that's good. And I'll have to do some more digging to see if that's happening on the pharmacy schooling side of things, because I definitely think it should be. Because I mean, there's a huge crisis outside of. I mean, there's always a staffing shortage. It seems like, no matter what decade we're in, but it seems like more and more, even on the pharmacy side of things, people are struggling to find people that are willing to, and I think that's also something to be said too. Like, it's okay to not be willing to have yourself being taken advantage of. Like, if your corporation or your company is consistently taking advantage of your time, of your energy, and not providing you with resources or the space to utilize those resources, then there is a problem there, and that gap needs to be addressed. And so, I think we have our work cut out for us, but I think we have passionate and motivated leaders, and then also, those that are willing to speak up and say, like you said earlier, in a constructive and compassionate way, hey, this isn't working. Let's figure something else out. So I think that will be the flow and the change that moves forward, I think.
All right. Good for you. I'm all for it.
I'm optimistic, but
Yes.
So where can people find you?
Sure. I have a website. It's joeshermanmd.com. Very easy to find. I'm also on LinkedIn, Joe Sherman MD. I am not in all the other social media platforms, unfortunately, because I don't have time to do that.
Yeah,
It's just not a place.
consuming.
I have other places. I'd rather be in my garden. And you can email me directly, joe@joeshermanmd.com. Anyone who is a health professional that is either struggling or would like some support in trying to discern if they are in the right place for them, then please contact me, joe@joeshermanmd.com. Be happy to have a free consultation with you and talk over how things are going.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. And I appreciate all the wonderful work that you're putting out into the world. I do think it's definitely taking us in the right direction. So thank you. I really appreciate it again.
Cool.
So everybody check out joeshermanmd.com. And, if you are a practitioner out there that is struggling, or even if you know someone, definitely send his info their way. He also does public speaking. And so if you happen to be a head of an organization or in a leadership position at your organization and you're listening to this, reach out and see if, how he can help your organization as well. So thank you again. And we will catch you guys on the next episode.
Thanks so much, Laura.
Thank you for joining me on LightBody Radio, where functional medicine meets intuitive healing and transformation happens on every level. If this episode resonated with you, please share, and if you're ready to go deeper, visit drlaramay.com to book a functional medicine consultation or an intuitive healing session. Whether you need to rebalance your body, clear your energetic blocks, or reconnect with your soul's purpose, I've got you. You can also follow me on Instagram or TikTok at Dr. Lara May for daily inspiration, energy updates, and healing tools. Remember, your healing is multidimensional, and so are you. Until next time, honor your body, trust your intuition, and activate your light.